Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of ModChat. For those who do not know, this here is my podcast I do in two different forms. First of all, it is available in a video visual form here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels. Additionally, it's also available in an actual audio-only podcast form where you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to, like an actual podcast. Simply look up ModChat, all one word, on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, ModChat is my podcast in which I come on here at least once a month, and I talk to you all in a little bit of a recap fashion about things that I find new, interesting, cool, maybe even do a little bit of show and tell in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. And this month is certainly going to be about the same as usual, but it seems like people seem to like the usual with ModChat, so we're just going to keep trucking on with it. Either way, there is going to be a lot to cover here, and there's actually something a little bit important in terms of like reach, communication, all that I do want to talk about. So that's actually going to be the first topic we're going to get into, but speaking of topics, let's just go ahead and get into it. All right, so I'll say this here. For the most part on this channel, I've very rarely directly referenced or called out or even really promoted my social media. Yes, it is in the description and such, and it is there so people can, of course, follow me on other platforms. However, I never really ask people to follow directly or anything. I've done it a handful of times, but it might be a little important now, and also something just to keep in mind here, because, well, this is not social media. This here is Gajina's GitHub repository, but you might notice with some folks in the PS4 and PS5 scenes specifically, if you try to check their Twitter account, you might get a little something like this. Although I feel like this here is probably from Gajina changing their username at one point. Realistically, there might be accounts that you're going to be looking for, which you might suddenly see notices such as this. Or even like this, if you are following a show such as ModChat and you're trying to click on direct Twitter links that are related to PS4 and PS5 modding, you might see things like this where they state this post violated the X rules. And that's really when I'm going to be saying it here, just the actual name of it, because no, I'm not calling it by the letter. I'm still calling this Twitter. Either way, I'm posting this here, and I'll even zoom in a little bit. Why not? Because this has been a thing that has been a little common here, unfortunately, because there's been a little bit of a ban wave going around, but I don't necessarily think it's that. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to give some of my opinions just based on what I see, kind of some of my feelings on here, but I do want to say this. I want to leave politics out of this, so if anybody is going to be picking any left or right-leaning politics here, indecisions, websites, and all that, look, this is actually completely apolitical here. This is really kind of just what's been going on. So unfortunately, there's been several accounts that have been targeted with deleted tweets and even leading to accounts being suspended, such as this one right here. And unfortunately, they've been some bigger names in the PS4 and PS5 modding scenes, and it's been people who've been reverse engineers, developers, and even people who make videos, post up news, things like that. Some of the people are here, and this does not include all of them. This is just a very small subset of users, are Gajina, for example, lost their account. Dr. Yin Yin also lost their account, otherwise known as Comboy 2019, or I guess Comboy 2020. And even fellow YouTubers who are familiar in this space. MB Crump or Michael Crump, for example, even though this is not a Twitter account, this is his Blue Sky because, well, he ended up losing his Twitter account. As well as another YouTuber here, Modded Warfare, actually touched up on this in one of his latest videos here. And here, this is an example of what you are getting. So it states here, this is violating our rules against illegal and regulated behaviors, and it's stating here this is the tweet in question which he had to remove. It says yet another P2JB implementation, this time using Yarpe to jailbreak up to 12.70 with the game Arcade Spirits The New Challengers. So here this was just a link to a video showing how to jailbreak using P2JB with the Arcade Spirits game. So to be clear, this is not like pirated content or anything like that. These are just like the guides right here. Even I myself here have been included, and it was specifically only PlayStation 4 content. Now, there were 4 tweets that ended up getting taken down, and they were these ones right here. And they were all, I'm sharing the videos because they were all linked to videos, by the way. That's all it was. One of them was how to update Goldhen on a jailbroken PS4 if you're using View After Free. Another one was this one right here, how to jailbreak your PS4 on firmware 13 or lower using BDJB. There was another jailbreak guide here, how to jailbreak your PS4 on firmware 13 with extended storage. And the last one here was how to update View After Free on a jailbroken PS4. Now, the videos are up, the videos are fine, but I'm sharing these yet again because, like I said, they were the tweets that were linking to the videos. Now, my own Twitter account is here, it's still up and running, but this is one of those things where, this kind of more getting into my opinion here. First of all, this has been an issue with Twitter recently. It's not just the modding community talking about this. It's more been in drama, I would say, like drama-centric communities or even some controversial figures and such, where really, let's say one person says something about another person, it might not even be disparaging, they might just be commenting on something that person did, and then all of a sudden the person who said something starts getting their tweets, like random tweets end up getting targeted, they keep getting their account locked, they have to keep deleting tweets, or they might even get their account suspended, and it kind of just seems a little too timely, especially with what we've been seeing here. I think with all this, I've seen like one Switch related tweet that had to be deleted, not mine, it was another user, but for the most part I've really only seen it with PS4 and PS5 modding related content. Now some people are thinking it might be Sony, and no, I'm going to say in my opinion, I don't believe it's Sony. If it was Sony, it would be something more official there, like a DMCA or something else there. This looks like a mass targeting campaign that has been exploited, like I said, not just with the PS4 scene, but also in Twitter in general, and it has been an issue. Al-Azif commented on this, for example, asking, yo, can you de-weaponize your mass report exploit that's going around? Because, like I said, this has been known. And they themselves followed up on this saying, I'm genuinely looking for a response on what you plan on doing about this. Why can people, unverified accounts, even mass report posts from months or years ago that even AI can tell aren't against the rules, and you just auto-lock accounts? Not only that, but when your account is locked, you can't even access support or anything. You're straight up just locked out of everything. This is especially egregious if someone is paying for priority support and they're just locked out of getting support altogether. Are you banning the accounts making the mass reports that you find to be fraudulent? As I believe that abuse is against the platform, correct? And yeah, I mean, those are valid questions there. So that's all to say and even ask, is there some kind of modding ban wave happening on Twitter? Well, I've been on the internet for a minute, right? And I'm going to say, just from my observations, no. What I personally believe, and again, this is my own personal belief, it looks like this is probably infighting within a community, which sometimes that's a thing. Sometimes companies don't have to go after communities. The community will kind of eat itself alive. And I believe there's probably people, just standard people who we don't know who they are, who are utilizing these mass reporting exploits and mass reporting issues on Twitter. Because the thing is too, when it comes to Twitter, I know it's supposed to be this whole free speech platform and haven and everything, for better or for worse, but the moderation there, I'm just going to say, I simply do not trust the moderation. I can sum it up incredibly simply. You can look at this modded warfare tweet right here, which he ended up getting in trouble for and had to delete, just linking to a video showing how to jailbreak a system with P2JB. Yet I have seen with my own eyes and my own eyeballs that are in my own eye sockets, I have seen physical threats of harm towards others on Twitter. I've seen them be reported, and then Twitter will take that report and they will follow up on the report and said, we did not remove the tweet, we didn't do anything because we did not see anything wrong with this despite looking into it. So that's the level of moderation or lack of moderation on the platform here. So that's all to say here that Twitter is certainly a shit show. It has been a shit show. I'm still on it because there's news on there. There's people on there who aren't on other places. Plus, I'm going to be honest, it's really entertaining to scroll on there, learn a few things, laugh a little bit and all that stuff when I'm taking a dump. So sometimes when I'm shitposting in the most literal sense right there. But either way, I'm showing this here because this here is Blue Sky, which many people from the community have either started using Blue Sky again or have been making Blue Sky accounts. Now, I've had a Blue Sky account for several years, and I'll say that if you're used to Twitter with the way it works and all that stuff, this is kind of like old Twitter. That's just going to be the easiest way to describe it right there. Now, I myself have enjoyed the Blue Sky platform. That's why I have it on here, and if we have more people on here, that's awesome. And it seems like that would be a better service to use than Twitter, because even if you like it, like I said, it's got its own issues there. So if you're wanting to make a Blue Sky account, it's easy enough. If you want to follow myself or others on Blue Sky, I know my URL is going to be down below in the description, and there's going to be several other people from the community that you can find on there with little to no issue. So that's really what I know about the Twitter suspensions here. There's some stuff we do know, there's a whole lot we don't know, but what I certainly know, at least with this, is that Twitter's moderation is, you know what, they make their own decisions, and even people who are trying to get all this stuff set up here, I think it's pretty much all like the support and all that, or most of it, it's all handled with AI. But even if you do somehow get a human review, I don't really know how credible that is. Like I said, with these systems in place here, we've seen these accounts and these type of tweets go down, some of the examples I've shown, but I've also seen violent threats towards other people get reported, get reviewed, and apparently Twitter thinks there's nothing wrong with those tweets. I don't know, let's just move on. Well, this here is going to be a pretty PS5-centric episode, so we can just go ahead and jump into the topics about the PS5. The first one here from developer Matum6 here being P2JB Y2JB. Now, I should also mention this as well too. P2JB has been updated several times where, in case you do not know, that stands for Patience to Jailbreak, and it's been updated in a way where we don't have to wait as long. So originally when it released, it would take about 3 hours to run. Yeah, what I'm saying is every time you want to jailbreak your PS5 with P2JB, you'd have to run it and wait about 3 hours. And that didn't guarantee that it was successful. Because it is a modification, it's a jailbreak, just because you're running it doesn't mean it's going to be successful the first, second, maybe even third time. Although let's hope so, because that's 6 to 9 hours right there. So now it's been brought down to work in about 50 minutes, which is much better than the 3 hours it was before. And for anybody who's thinking, do I really have to wait 3 hours every time to jailbreak my PS5? Well, if you have a digital-only system or a high enough firmware or both, yeah, that's kind of the option right now, but we're seeing some other ones available. And of course, I've talked in a previous episode about what you could do is if you are on a firmware 12.0 or lower, what would be recommended is you jailbreak using P2JB, and as soon as you get it running successfully, you then unpatch the BDJ stack, so that way you can use an old BDJB disk, so that way you can just pop it in and run it, and it will work as long as you don't format or reset the console. Either way here, this here is, like I said, P2JB Y2JB, because this ends up combining Y2JB, which is the YouTube jailbreak, where you can actually take the YouTube app itself and use it as a entry point, so that's your userland exploit, and you combine it with P2JB, that is going to be the kernel exploit, and then you're able to actually jailbreak the system. It's even stated here this works on PS5s between firmware 9.0 and up to 12.40, and it is a port of the Gajina and Chibarik 3000 P2JB kernel exploit from the Lua Core Lua loader host to Y2JB, which I described as the YouTube one. They have confirmed working. This is a jailbreak end-to-end, plus the GPU DMA debug menu, as well as an ELF loader, which was delivered automatically by the Y2JB host. And there's also a persistent unpatcher delivery. So closing the YouTube host app after completion no longer kernel panics the console, which is also great to have here. So there is setup instructions and everything to go through this here, sending the payload and all that. You could see here with the usage, you have to send the payload itself using the Python script available. You wait about 50 minutes, and then you wait for this to be completed, and from there you can send your elves and do what you need to on there. And we're seeing even more as well too for higher firmwares, because Matum6 came through yet again here with P2JB Yarpe, which is the same thing I've already described P2JB, but this here is using the Yarpe exploit, which means this is a port yet again of P2JB to Yarpe using HelloUno's RenPy userland exploit. So this is essentially using a save game exploit for the game Arcade Spirit, the new challengers. So if you have that game, or if you're wanting to pick up that game and use it as an entry point, you're able to do that now. It is confirmed working end-to-end on both editions of the game. Of course, they say the same thing, jailbreak plus GPU DMA debug menu plus an in-place ELF loader. And this one here, it has the same requirements, the usage and all that here. You can see, interestingly enough though, there's the PS5 and PS4 versions, but the PS5 edition takes about 7 minutes less on average to run, so I guess that's where all that speed goes for it. But since this one is a save game exploit here, you could restore a system backup image, or it even says here that you can install the provided save into the game save slot manually. If you have a jailbroken console, you can use something such as Apollo Save Tool, and if you have a non-jailbroken system but you do have a PSN activated account on there, you can import the save through USB, which would essentially be taking the save file, re-signing it to your account, putting it on a USB drive, and then transferring it to the system itself. And if that wasn't enough, we have yet another one here, which is Netflix and Hack, which this this one here, it states inject custom JavaScript into the Netflix PS5 Air screen by intercepting Netflix's request to localhost. So just like, well, pretty similar to the other ones here, this is really just taking the Netflix application, modifying it in a way to get it to be a jailbreaking device, and then using that as a vehicle to actually jailbreak the system. Now, this is now working up to 12.x firmwares, which is great. The thing is, there's a lot of instructions here because Netflix and Hack does work a little differently than Y2JB. If you can really only pick one, it seems like Y2JB using the YouTube app would probably be the better one there. And this here is the PS4 requirements here. We're looking for PS5, so you would have to do the same thing where you'd really have to set up a extended storage drive by getting yourself an image which you can download from the releases, putting it on a drive, and then using that to transfer the app over to your console. There's instructions here in which you can use a proxy to run it on firmwares less than or equal to 10.01, but if you're on a firmware higher than 10.01, this one can take about 3 hours to set up if you're doing the optimal flow here, because this is N2JB to Y2JB to BDJB, and you have to run P2JB 3 times. Yeah, you have to set all of this up here, and then it even states here running the exploit, we're going to have to run P2JB 3 times for this to work, which at the time of writing this means around 3 hours. Strap in. And really for the instructions here, if you're starting from scratch, you have to make sure your Netflix and Hack has been set up. You then make sure you run the Netflix app on your console, wait for P2JB to finish jailbreaking successfully, and then you use that here to be able to utilize the debug menu to install the YouTube application. Once that's been done, you have to run this again because it says that you have to shut down or reboot the console, and once you reboot it, you have to run YouTube 1 time, then you have to run Netflix and Hack, you have to wait for that for about another 50 minutes, and then once that's all set up, the necessary update, it seems, is downloaded, and then you have to restart the system yet again. And then once you do that, you're going to have to set your system here to localhost. This time around, you need to run the YouTube application, so you'll be able to run Y2JB, but once you do that, yet again, you are going to have to run P2JB, and then once P2JB is run successfully through Y2JB, at that point, you can then run the BDJ unpatch elf file, and from there, you can use BDJB like an actual disk. There's a lot here. There's a lot. You're going to have to really put in some work if you're wanting to jailbreak a PS5 on higher firmwares, but the methods and methodologies and just all of the options here that are available that people are crafting up and making and releasing are just incredible, to put it lightly. I have to refresh myself slightly on here because from the original Y2JB here, if you have a jailbroken PS5, you're good to go. You can set this up yourself here. You don't really have to worry about the data on here. But if you have a non-jailbroken PS5, you have to wipe the system because in the process, you have to take a pre-made backup file and you have to restore that to the system itself. While as if you're using Netflix and Hack on the PS5, you don't have to wipe the system. If you're using it on the PS5 instead of wiping the system, you can just use extended storage. So like I said earlier, you do have to image a compatible drive and have that set up, but once that's done, you can just image the drive, hook it up to your PS5, transfer the app over, and you have your modified Netflix app. In the process, you don't have to wipe the system. Now, coming from Dr. Yin Yin here with a nice write-up on here, this here is drive cloning for PS4, PS5. And they even state here there may be some obscure methods to do this a bit better, but from the end result later, you'll see that it's mostly heavy in creating an image, but light on using an image. And no having people mess with their drive firmware is not a good option. This is not for piracy, and a warning, anything you do with your drive will wipe it, so back up any data you care about. Now, this is giving information on how to create like images for the PS4, PS5, like drive images that you can just have people, well, image to a drive there, essentially clone an existing drive out there, but you're able to download that and then put it on your own drive so it acts like that. But we're not really looking for the PS4 type one here. There's been a lot of research that's done on here, but we're looking into the one related to the PS5. Specifically, we're talking about the M.2 slot. And this year's been interesting because this actually ended up picking up more steam recently with some people such as Bringa Studios who were, well, bringing more attention to this. Now it states here for the PS5 internal extended storage M.2 slot PCIe 4 bypass. Usually the PS5 has a strict requirement for PCIe 4 and will not allow the console to fully boot with anything lesser. But in the PS5 Discord server, user Windfox wrote the Netflix and hack image to his PCIe 3.0 SSD, which allowed him to format it and afterwards access all the space in a usable manner to install PS4 games and even run Linux from it, PS5 games untested. Afterwards, user Flavio Penas PS traced the steps and trimmed down the original image to a reasonable sized one to quickly get this going. This means you can now use PCIe 3.0 drive internally by following these steps below. They did state here that the usual 250GB limit is also not in effect courtesy of Bringa Studios. A 128GB SSD was mounted. So what you need to do is you need to download one of the images available. It looks like if you're using firmware 4.0 or above, you can use the image that Dr. Yin Yin has provided. And if you're using firmware 4.03 or above, you're going to use the other image available here that Flavio Penas PS has ended up releasing there. From there, you just need to take your image, you need to write it to a drive using something such as Balena Etcher, and then you need to plug in the drive, and once you plug it in, turn on the system, format it, and it will work. Now, this has generated some excitement here because like it was said here, and you might have run into this if you tried M.2 drives on your PS5, it requires at minimum a PCIe 4 SSD in there. And if you try anything lower or older or slower, it simply will not allow you to use that drive. But now we're able to do that. The thing is, we're kind of in the discovery phase of it, because what you can do is you can go out, you can get a PCIe 3 drive, you can image this over to it and get it up and running. But it seems like people are trying to figure out which firmwares this works for and which ones it doesn't. Now, if you're using one of these older firmwares, first of all, it has to be minimum firmware 4.0, because firmware 4.0 is where Sony ended up unlocking the M.2 slot on there. However, for people who might be thinking, oh, I'm going to do this and save some money and run this on the latest firmware, you might not be able to do that. For many of the older firmwares, the jailbreakable firmwares, it looks like that's possible. But we're seeing jailbreaks on higher and higher firmwares now. So now on some of those higher firmwares, it looks like these same images do not work. And this is kind of where the discovery phase is, because this is not in here, this is unsighted, but I've even seen people report things like, hey, you can actually get it to work on higher firmwares and maybe even the latest firmware. The method that I was seeing people talk about was essentially you have to have an existing PCIe 4.0 drive already installed in the PS5 and formatted and ready to go. Then you need to take the drive out of your PS5, image it onto your computer, and then you need to take that image from the drive that was already set up and then put it onto a PCIe 3 SSD. And once you do that, it should have the necessary information there in order to just work on the PS5. And the funny thing is as well too, Bringa Studio, like I said, he did a video talking about this. He even showed some footage. And when he did like comparisons side by side with like Ratchet and Clank was like 1 second slower off the PCIe 3 drive than it was on the PCIe 4 drive, or that might have even been the internal drive, mind you. But still, it was like 1 second slower. He really didn't notice a big difference there. So interesting to see here, and I would be interested in seeing the differences between the firmwares and how we can really get it going on pretty much all firmwares here. You know, I really forgot how many times I was going to be referencing this man here, but Madam 6, we also have another release from them being Ultra Core. Ultra Core here is Jack X compatible. That is a PS2 game that is working on the PS4 and technically the PS5 as well too. It's one of those backwards compatible PS2 games that was re-released here. But you can see here that this is a Jack X Combat Racing save game exploit. And they state here that this is a research entry point for Jack X Combat Racing, which is a PS2 classic on PS5 package. It works for the US as well as the EU versions in the spirit of Mastercore and Lua Core. Ultra Core is a Jack X port or derivative of Gajina's Lua Core, the original Lua framework this is based on and modified. And a reference for those who do not know, Mastercore was the one which was released many years ago by CTURT, in which that ended up utilizing the Okage Shadow King PS2 game as a sandbox escape, which people have been using to also jailbreak their systems. Now, the only problem is with Mastercore, it does require Okage Shadow King, and that game was never released physically, so you cannot get a disc of it for PS4 or PS5. You have to be someone where you had your system online at one point, you purchased the game, installed it on your system, you have the license there, and then you took it offline. Now there's more information on this stating here the status of this. This repository is the result of reverse engineering the jackx emulator bundle from a save game up to user-controlled native code inside of the PS5's PS2 emulator. The chain reached in order is first save exploit. They reversed the PS2 VMC save format and used a profile name overflow to take control of cache PC in the PS2 guest to arbitrary PS2 code execution, which is Mastercore Stage 1. Next up is the PS2 EMU escape. This is out of bounds through the emulator's SMAP dev9 registers, corruption of GN status buffer to a corruption of the IO read dispatch table to native x86 64 RIP control in the eboot process. Next up, you have the native primitives, so you have your base links, arbitrary read-write, direct sys calls, and RWX via, well, right here, a alias shared memory. The Lua stage, in which the bootstrap hands control of the eBoot's embedded Lua VM running the ultra-core Lua framework. You have the just-in-time compiler there, code execution with the remote Lua loader, and from there, PS5 jailbreak payloads, experimental. Over the remote loader, this userland can host a Lua core PS5 kernel, exploit payload with its exploit logic untouched. Only a rebased gadget offset plus a position-independent rebuild. So far, only Poops has been tried, and that is the Poopsploit kernel exploit, which, oh man, I get to make this reference again.
Look, we're adults in here, you can say it.
Poop?
You said poop! I said! I said poop in here!
Poop!
In a successful run, it reached kernel read-write and an on-console ELF Lua loader. See payloads. Coming down here to look at the payload here, it looks like the just-in-time compat.lua re-implement Lua Core's just-in-time API on top of our command 0x215 engine, with the aim of letting a Lua Core native shellcode payload run on this userland with its exploit logic unchanged. So far, only Poops has been tried. In a successful run, it appeared to reach the full userland to kernel jailbreak and bring up the on-console ELF loader over port 9021. This is not guaranteed. The kernel exploit itself is firmware specific and probabilistic, so it may need a few attempts or not work on a given build. Now, porting a Lua Core payload only needs one offset as well as a position-independent rebuild. As for the actual instructions to run it here, you can get a crafted save from the releases section here and then re-sign the save data for your own PSN account and move it to the system. From there, you can launch jackx, load up the save, and enter adventure mode. When the cutscene starts, press triangle to skip it to reach the trigger sooner, then the exploit fires off and the loader dialog appears, and it will be listening on port 8888. So we do have another entry point here, which is really awesome to see. If we can get more options here, that's fantastic. Now, unfortunately, I wish I could show you more on this one here because this was quite cool. This is a release from user Drakmore, which is the APR EMU, or here AMPR EMU, AMPR EMU. And you can see on this GitHub repository, there's not much here, unfortunately. However, the real stuff is within this Discord server here, so I'm hoping that this will be more fleshed out. It is currently in beta, but this APR EMU ended up releasing, and keeping it short and sweet, there was a subset of games, many games on the PS5, which did not work in a jailbreak compatible format due to needing APR functionality. Now, this was something I was not as familiar with, but from what I understand looking it up, it seems like that is a decompression feature which is required by certain PS5 games. So games that did require APR just did not work, or they would crash, or they just weren't stable. But now with the APR EMU, this here ends up emulating the APR functionality, and it allows those games to work. Granted, we're still in the early stages. From what I've seen, many games do take a while to load up. They could take like several minutes to load up. They could even have things such as just like stuttering cutscenes or things like that. So you might not get the best performance here because this is emulating that functionality, but we still have something that is now available to actually get some games working, which weren't able to work before. One of the big ones, for example, is the Ratchet & Clank game on PS5. You could launch it from a disc, but you could not dump the game and then play it on a jailbroken system using a dumped version of the game. but now with the APR Emu, that is possible. Now this I thought was a really cool application here, developed and released by a friend of the show here, Stoned Modder, and this here is Ghostpad, which it states here is a PS5 virtual DualSense over TCP. I'll let this video play out here, but it states here that you can remote control a jailbroken PS5 from any PC using keyboard, mouse, or a real controller without needing PSN, Remote Play, or any official Sony software. Ghostpad app is a Windows desktop app for controlling a jailbroken PS5 over your network. It sends virtual DualSense input to the PS5 and includes macro recording, keyboard and mouse controls, gamepad pass-through, and optional beeper and LED tools. That macro recording is interesting. I wonder if you could do something such as like similar to like speedruns or tool-assisted speedruns, so you can kind of just set up a few things, and that way you can kind of load in a file like a script almost, and it could like play a game or run through things or test a few things for you. That'd be interesting to see. But it does say that Ghostpad is a payload and a PC GUI that creates a virtual DualSense on a jailbroken PS5 and forwards keyboard, on-screen, or scripted input to it over LAN. There's the scripted input. That's what I'm looking for. The shell and games see it as a real controller. And you could see right here, they kind of show the PC GUI using Ghostpad GUI. From there, the input is over TCP port 6967 to your jailbroken PS5. You drop in the payload ELF, and then from there, you have the virtual DualSense at slot 0. And it's able to communicate back from the PS5 to Ghostpad UI using kernel logging over TCP port 3232. But there's plenty of instructions right here for the first time setup, input redirection, any macros you might want to record, as well as some optional tools here, so like the beeper and LED, as well as system state. There's more information here with a technical write-up and such available, but there's a lot of info as well too. For example, quick start if you just want to get up and running with this, and this looks great so far. Love to see it. Now for our last thing here, I should preface this here's a meme, a joke, not real, but you know what? If this can be used to link to people who are kind of just, endlessly asking, this is funny to me. Elazif ended up releasing this GitHub repository here, which is the 1.0 to 3.20 WebKit exploit. And it states here, 100% success rate. Just write your own code, works on every firmware, unpatchable. So there we go, we have that at least. Now to give some love to the other systems here, we're going all the way back to the PlayStation 2 here with PS2 Launcher from developer Irfan Lesner. Now this here is stating PS2 Launcher is a modern PlayStation 2 game launcher focused on delivering a cleaner, faster, and more console-like experience while maintaining the compatibility and reliability of Open PS2 Loader. Built for real PlayStation 2 hardware, PS2 Launcher introduces visual improvements, enhanced game browsing, modernized layouts, and display optimizations designed to make PS2 game management feel more polished and user-friendly. And you can see right here, well, I mean, they really just made it look like a PS5. I'm not even saying that in a bad way. I'm just like, no, I'm not even mad about this. I'm impressed. I had no idea there was a Street Cricket game until I looked at this here. I had no idea. Now for the features here, it does have a modern launcher style interface, a redesigned game browser, cover art support, automatic game detection, USB game loading, internal hard drive support, fast game list navigation, custom themes and visual enhancements, background art support, improved game information display, memory card integration, controller-friendly navigation, lightweight, and optimized for PS2 hardware. There's also some display improvements they put here as well too, in which it has improved progressive scan presentation, enhanced image scaling for modern TVs and HDMI solutions, and a few other things such as cleaner menu rendering, better cover art presentation, optimized widescreen layouts, smoother UI rendering, so that's nice to see as well too. I mean, if we can get something looking a little prettier on the PS2, so be it. That's awesome to see. It looks like there are releases available right here, so if you want to get one of these releases here set up on your PS2, you're more than welcome to. Even with the supported devices, if anybody is wondering what those are, you have USB functionality over FAT32 and exFAT, the MX4 SIO, as well as internal hard drive support for the FAT systems using either the APA FAT32 or the exFAT setup there. Do keep in mind though that SMB is not currently supported, and you can also actually download game covers as well too, but it does require an active Ethernet connection, which is, again, still cool that we have that available on PS2. Now this here, we're still on the PS2, kind of. This is PCSX2x6. Now if anybody's wondering if this is just PCSX2 multiplied 6 times. No, it's actually not. This here is from developer El Isra, and this here is a fork of the PCSX2 emulator to emulate the Namco System246 as well as the System256 arcade units. The quickest way I can kind of summarize that there, if you've never heard of those or if you're not familiar with them, in short, there were several games such as the Soul Calibur games that were available in arcades. And at the heart of it, they were actually running on PlayStation 2 hardware, but they were not specifically PS2 retail hardware. It was really here, like I said, at the heart of it, pretty much running arcade games on PlayStation 2 hardware, which that is not a new thing by any means. It wasn't even really that novel, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. If you look it up, you can go through some fun rabbit holes there. But for example, Dreamcast, in the arcade, it had Atomus Wave. For the GameCube, there was the Triforce. For the Xbox, I believe it was Chihiro. These systems did run and operate differently when they were in the arcade, but if you ever get a hold of one of those cabinets that is one of those systems, like a Chihiro or a System256 or any of these other ones like the Triforce, and you rip it open and take it apart, you'll look at it and you're going to see in there, well, the motherboard and the guts of one of those respective systems. Either way, this was forked and released because you cannot play System246 or even System256 games, to my understanding at least, on a PlayStation 2 emulator, like the standard PCSX2. But now you're able to do this on here. You can come over to the GitHub repository here, which allows you to download the latest build available, which is available for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, so you really have the trifecta here. There is more information here on here as well too, like for example, that they really set this up kind of like similar to the .hacks or hacks.guide sites here. So for example, information on like how to format a Soul Calibur 2 Conquest card. They even state right here, given Soul Calibur 2 is the only one to ever use the second memory card port and having a special format for it, a dedicated page for it was fitting. There's also some bugs and troubleshooting here in which you can open up an issue on GitHub or join their Discord server. There's also game configurations options right here. So everything is showing here, everything is documented, and yeah, you could see this is definitely more effort than just running a standard PlayStation 2 emulator, but I mean, hey, we're emulating just like straight up PS2 arcade hardware. Yeah, I guess that's how you say it. Even getting the BIOS here, it has information for this, and it even states here you will need an arcade BIOS, otherwise games will not work due to a plethora of API differences on BIOS modules like FiOIO, MCMan, SIO2man, and more. And that is really what sets it apart. One of the components that sets it apart from, even though it is pretty much PS2 guts at the heart of it, it's not a straight up PlayStation 2. There's even information on dumping games as well too, in which it states here, well, there's this actually a really good graphic right here. For a PS2, you typically just have the PS2 itself where you dump the BIOS from, or here you get it from the System246, and the game software and assets are just going to be on the DVD or CD itself. While as on here for the 246, you might have the software on, you know, your Conquest card, your special card right there. The game assets could be on a hard drive or they could be on a disk. Now, in order to dump the actual dongle, it states that if you have a jailbroken retail PS2, you can actually dump all your dongles into a USB drive using Memory Card Annihilator. And from a PC, you can use the official PS3 memory card adapter and use the PS3 MCA tool. But you can't directly do that using a System246, which is expected. Probably not the best use of the arcade hardware right there. And then when it comes to actually dumping the game media, it's a lot simpler, it looks like. You can take a CD or DVD and you can just dump it using something like ImageBurn to create an image. And with a hard drive, you just need to do a sector by sector dump with something such as HDD raw copy tool. So thankfully, those ones, if you're actually dumping the game media, not nearly as bad as some other ones. Either way, we certainly love to see this here, so if you've wanted to play around with some of those System246 or even 256 arcade games, we now have a proper emulator here for this. It is still a work in progress, but you know what? That's better than what we had before. We went back to the PS2, but we're going back even further, man. This here I thought was hilarious, and it ended up going in some further ways than I expected. But this here was posted by user Goylup, in which they stated here, the new method to dump N64 games is absurd and now my favorite way to do it. So we just watched this video here. You could see they have this hooked up, and you know, I cringe a little bit seeing that, but you know what? I guess it works here. So that is hooked up to a Craig. Oh, that's Craig. Okay, yeah, that's Craig. That's hooked up to one of those CDG karaoke machines. And you can see here that this is a homebrew application, a dumper that you have to run. He's running it on a flash cart, so it looks like the SC64. So what he does is he runs this application. Let's just restart it here. He runs the application. It gets to a point where he has to swap, so then he ends up pulling out the summer cart. He puts in a retail game. It ends up dumping a little bit of the game right here, which I presume here is going to be dumping it to internal system memory. And then once it tells you to swap, you have to swap back over to the summer cart. You have to press start, and then it's going to dump the game bits itself from the internal system memory to the actual cartridge itself. So you're going to have to swap it several times because you can see, how slow the process is. But it's really funny and cool seeing that we do have this available. Now, even better, they followed up on this and said, sorry, I did not realize the reach this post would have. Here's the GitHub repo. Please support the original developer, in which it links to this one right here, N64 SwapDumper. I'm sorry, I usually try with these usernames here. I'm just going to zoom on this on screen because I'm seeing like 6 different ways to pronounce this. I'm sorry. If they reach out with a pronunciation, cool, I would appreciate that, but otherwise, it's all good. I'm not going to try to butcher this. I'm not sure. But either way, this is N64 SwapDumper, which is a cartridge swap-based cartridge dumper for N64, requiring only a flash cart. You can dump saves, ROM, or both, inspired by and based on Sharksaver 64, which right here, we can even check this out. This can be, okay, I knew it. Yeah, a tool to flash Game Shark and related device firmwares using only a flash cart and your N64. So as opposed to actually flashing a Game Shark or flashing a cartridge, we are using this to dump a cartridge. Now, this does work by letting you boot up with a flash cart and then swap over to another cartridge while it's running. So they're really utilizing stop and swap right here. But they did test this with a summer cart, and it states here that you can dump to SD. So in short, this allows you to dump your cartridge ROM and or save data to the SD card of your flash cart. There is also an option here. It is a planned feature, but not functional, to dump to Joybus. There's also another option in which you can restore a save, and finally there's another option here in which you can clear a save. So there's several options available here. They do say here, there's a big disclaimer, but one of the big things they state is that hot swapping cartridges while the N64 is powered on carries an inherent risk and may cause permanent damage to the console, cartridges, accessories, or connected hardware. So just keep that in mind. It looks like this is made with the best of intentions, but of course there's always going to be risks there. And this is really cool if you do want to back up your own saves or even your own cartridges on here. You have a flash cart, you have the games, a working N64, and maybe you don't have one of those devices like a game dumping device where you can just hook up a cartridge to your computer. Well, there's N64 SwapDumper here. But hold on, we're not done. This isn't the only reason why I'm bringing this up here. All right, I just need you all to see this, right? We're going to go back here and check this out. This is how I was seeing it before. CTurt of all people was involved in this. CTurt ended up commenting and saying, cool to see the N64 cartridge swap exploit finally released publicly. I originally found this back in 2024, but couldn't publicly release it for contractual reasons. Here's an old demo using it for region lock bypass, chained with remote code execution from Shogi Hacks, and they do have a video right here which we'll check out. Now looking at this video, this is N64 software PIF disable region lock bypass. You can see that he ends up running this here. Now he's able to get to this point, and it looks like he ended up doing this if I go back a little bit, because I'm not as familiar with this game, but this is one of those games, this Shogi game here, this is one of those games that does have network availability or network connectivity, network functionality, I'm trying to say. So it doesn't surprise me he was able to exploit this, but you can see it gets to this point, it says press reset, so he has to physically press the reset button, ready to swap, so then he pulls out that cartridge. Looks like he's taking another one. Now, this here is Super Mario 64. That's a PAL version of the game, it seems, because it's in English and it didn't have the ESRB rating on here, but you can see he's launching it. He's able to get in. This is also in English as well, too, but boom. He's able to actually play this here. That's cool. That's cool. That's super cool to see. So, yeah, he was able to bypass that and get this all working. Oh, and that's really cool. That's cool. Okay, I forgot he did that at the end there. I actually forgot he did that. That is awesome. We love to see it. Now, you all know I do love my Xbox 360 and the original Xbox, and this was something here I wouldn't be covering directly because I just don't use the operating system this is intended for, but this here was developed by developers RDM Roca, as well as it looks like Joshua Riesboard. So here, this is xtafkit, which it states is a Mac native TUI workbench for Xbox 360 and original Xbox drives. Plug a console drive into your Mac over USB, then browse, transfer files, resolve game titles, decode profile gamer tags, and work with XISO disk images from a polished terminal UI plus a small CLI interface. Now, for some of the features here, it does have that terminal UI file browser with slot-aware folder labels. So that includes game titles, content type categories, gamer tags shown next to raw IDs, title resolution. So about 5,500 Xbox 360 and original Xbox games were compiled in, with on-demand STFS header parsing for anything the catalog misses. Profile gamertag extraction per file resolution for arcade, XNA, marketplace, installer folders, XISO extraction and God conversion, STFS extraction, so that would be for any of those like Xbox Live Arcade, Indie, title update packages, things like that, a Mac native IO, as well as a file-backed test image generator for development without hardware. You can see with these supported formats, it does support FATX for the original Xbox, as well as xtaf. Wait, I just realized now, xtaf is just FATX backwards. I just realized that, so now you gotta be kidding me. But that is for the Xbox 360. And also, both FAT16 and FAT32 entry sizes are handled automatically. Now, there's tons more information on here in terms of utilizing the XISO tools in order to extract out any XISOs, SFTS extractions as well too, the key bindings that are set up here, sending an XISO over, and more. Now, even for the origin point here, it would be worth reading this here. They state that xtafkit started as a fork of FATXRS from developer Joshua Riesboard, which provided the FATX xtaf file system core. The project has since diverged. Title catalog with merged Xbox 360 and original Xbox sources, on-demand STFS resolution, profile gamertag decryption, slot-aware folder display, TUI first workflow, XISO extraction, games on demand conversion, and STF container extraction. Credit to the original author for the file system foundation. So really cool to see, and for people who've been wanting to work with their drives and do some of this stuff here, some of the stuff that's been mentioned, the releases are here, by the way. If you want to come to the releases, check this out, and there is a ton of updates and information on here when these are done. Essentially, you could see that if you have an Xbox 360, you want to work with the drives on here, the actual drives themselves, or you want to work with anything like the XISO extraction and such, and you don't want to utilize another operating system, like you don't want to spin up a VM, you don't want to pull out a old Windows computer, or even a computer with Linux on there and use something such as Wine to help you out there, you now actually have something native to Apple and Mac OS. So for anybody who's been wondering if they could do this stuff with Mac OS, you can with the xtafkit. Now, I really don't cover stealth servers on the Xbox 360 because I'm just gonna be honest, I'm one of those people, I don't use stealth servers. I really don't rock with them or anything. There's been a few I've used at times, but for the most part, no. When it comes to any of my RGH or bad update shenanigans or anything, I really just block Xbox Live on there, and if I do want to play online, I use Link since it's just conveniently set up within the system itself there. But no, for the most part, I really don't use stealth servers. But this here was something that was pretty interesting, and this is something that actually a lot of people were kind of asking about in some way. And I didn't think it was going to be possible, but it looks like the madmen here ended up doing it here. This here was posted originally on 360 Hacks, which is how I found out about it, by xesecret69, in which this is a standby mode for bad update users. No need to keep running the bad update ABadAvatar exploit so many times. They even state this is a free feature for users. Many add-on features are free. This will allow users of bad update or ABadAvatar to put their console into a standby state, and when they next power on the console, it will load straight into stealth without having to redo the exploit. All plugins will also remain loaded while in this state. Also, due to this feature redoing the boot animation, we've allowed users to provide their own bootanim.xex to show upon recovering from standby mode. For example, the 9199 boot animation, just put the file inside the stealths folder on your hard drive or USB and name it standby bootanim.xex. This feature is still in development and might have some issues. I'll be working to improve it soon. If you have issues with it not enabling, make sure you're connected to Xbox Live and signed into a Xbox Live account to improve the chances of success. And they've also included some videos, but we're going to look at this first one here. So let's go ahead and load this up. Now right here, this is a quick one. So it's loading in here. We have the Xbox 360 booted up. And we'll just go ahead and just view this whole thing. So Xbox ROM B is signed in. There we go. They are connected to the stealth server. Now there we go. It's loading in. And I know they are going to have to, XB guard, log them in. And now they're going to have to bring up the actual XB guard menu itself. So let's see. Yeah, it takes a while on 360. It takes a while. You just need to wait a bit. Yeah. There we go. So they bring up the XB guard menu. And that was pretty quick. Hold on. I'm going to have to bring this up here because there is a feature. It was very quick, but you could see right here under account console information, there is this new feature here, which is enter standby mode. So it looks like they made that menu go away. All right. They're going to go over there, enter standby mode. They actually selected it. So now the console is presumably in standby. Yep, it's turned off. Now they're not showing the actual system itself, so like we can't see the actual Xbox in action, but presumably they're turning it back on. We see right here, this is the different boot animation that came up. We also had the, I'll back it up a little bit. Yep, disconnect from Xbox Live, that showed. And now once this load up, system recovered from a nap that lasted 0 hours, 0 minutes, 4 seconds. That's cool, it shows all that, but yeah. Once you do that, it loads it up here. We'll load up part 2 as well. Why not? Now, this was a 10-hour plus standby they're advertising here, so we can wait. Yep, system recovered from a nap that lasted 10 hours, 12 minutes, and 30 seconds. So that's pretty much just leaving your system off overnight. Now, when they do this here, it reloads the boot animation. And let's see how this looks from the other side. Now, there we go. We got this loaded up. Different UI on here, mind you. But there we go. Signed into Xbox Live. And yeah, so that's a bit of how it works. So if you've been wanting a feature like that, it looks like the only thing is this is on XB Guard. I'm not sure if other stealth servers will have this same setup here. Additionally, I'm also unsure if this will actually like release to the public because there's going to be many people who they don't use stealth servers, they don't have interest in stealth servers, but they do want something like this. But I also am aware on this as well too, that this is certainly a thing that I'm sure XB Guard does want to guard a little bit because hey, if they have something that kind of set them apart from some other stealth services, such as well a standby mode like this, I would understand why they would want to keep that a bit of an exclusive. But if we can see it hopefully open sourced available on other things, even just for offline systems in the future, that'd be really awesome to see. I think we just kind of keep going backwards on this because I kind of pick something and then I go just on the older versions and older versions of the system here. And this is like no other, of course. So this is kind of similar to the other ones, but from Team Resurgent, who really served the original Xbox scene pretty well, we have RXDK tools, which they state here is recompiled original Xbox XDK host tools for 64-bit Windows 10 and Windows 11. The classic XDK shipped with 32-bit utilities that no longer run on modern Windows. XDK tools rebuilds them as x64 native ports. All console-facing tools use a statically linked xbdbgs.lib client and talk to kits over the Xbox Debug Monitor XBDM protocol. So there's a few things included here. You have Explore, the Neighborhood app, File Transfer, Build, as well as debug tools available. Some of these here that you might have heard of are Xbox Launch, XB Watson. The Neighborhood app, which I've actually used before, is RXDK Neighborhood. This one in particular I have used before, so that's awesome to see here. But you do have a lot of information available. So this does require Windows 10 or Windows 11, an original Xbox development kit on the network, and administrator rights to install the shell extension. Now the cool thing is, if you're wondering if you need the actual old like Xbox Neighborhood app or the SDK, no, actually you don't on here. You do need to download Xbox Neighborhood, you need to install that there, and that'll allow you to have the shell extension on here, and then from there you can open up the RXDK Neighborhood app once installed, and you can add your console. And it all looks a little something like this. This first image, taking a look at this here, yep, that's where you can go into your neighborhood available and you can add your system. We got another one here where you can actually open it up. It looks like they have opened it up and they are navigating all the partitions that are on there. as well as right here, they're in the Y partition and they're looking at the audio that is available there. So if you've used some tools like that, you should be pretty familiar with them, but now it's nice that they are available here just freely and openly, and also updated for 64-bit Windows right here. There's a lot here that you can read up on if you're wanting some stuff such as, oh, like an Xbox image file browser. That's all available. XP Watson to get some of that nice debug action, but you don't have to build this from source. Oh no, you can actually scroll up here, you can go over to the releases section and check it out. Boom, there are new updates that are made with GitHub Actions, and there are all the individual executables that you can go ahead, download and load up and, mess around with and have fun in a modern but native Windows interface. Now, out of stuff I never thought I would cover here, this here is a Saints Row mod, and specifically this is for Saints Row 2 PC DLC. This is actually linked to me by a friend of the channel Caboose, or Caboose Says WTF. Now, kind of just reading through this here, it states that this is a project that ports over all of the single-player DLC content, including the clothing, NPCs, vehicles, and missions from Ultor Exposed, Uncut, and Corporate Warfare. Multiplayer content might come out at a later date, but the co-op functionality works and you can play the missions with a partner. Additionally, it has fixes for oversights with the original DLC, such as ARC-based unlocks being instantly received, or issues with the vehicles that were never noticed, and more. Of course, we're not a huge team, and despite all of us having tested it as well as having additional testers, it's possible there might be some issues with the port project we're not aware of. In any such cases, please report them to us. Now, for some of the requirements here, you are going to need a vanilla copy of Saints Row 2 on PC. It says that many big mods go over various vanilla limits and mod compatibility may vary. Use the DLC with mods. Simple mods that won't conflict, such as the Xbox radios, are fine at your own risk. You're also going to need a clean save here. And finally, you're also going to need the juiced patch, at least version 9.0.0. And this here is really simple enough where it looks like you just need to grab the DLC and drop it into the game itself, the same way you would install the juiced patch on here. So it looks like the developers themselves are Turvil Leet, Dropoff, as well as Clippy95. And if you look at this, Caboose is one of the testers right there who ended up putting this in front of me. So if you have the PC version of Saints Row 2 and you've wanted that single player DLC, good news, it has been ported over from the 360. If you thought the original Xbox was our limit, like, no, we're going back even further. We got this from Crix, actually, which unfortunately, I wish that there was an actual release available for this, but it doesn't look like there is, so you would have to get this from source and compile it, unless he puts a release out there. But this here is MegaDoctor. It states that MegaDoctor turns the Mega EverDrive Pro or Core cartridge into a diagnostic tool for troubleshooting Sega Mega Drive and Genesis consoles. The diagnostic ROM is designed to operate even under severe hardware failure conditions, such as faulty RAM or missing CPU signals on the cartridge bus. Even if the diagnostic ROM cannot boot, MegaDoctor can still work in passive mode by monitoring bus signals and providing useful low-level information for hardware diagnostics and fault analysis. To start diagnostics, enter the cartridge into the console, connect it to the PC via USB, power on the console, and run MegaDoctor executable. Now, it looks like there is a diagnostic ROM available when you build this. There's also a PC app available. There's some pre-built project files ready to use, the source code for the custom mapper for this, as well as a script here to collect the project files and packages and put them into a dist directory. Now, interestingly enough, there's actually two modes you can run this in. You can run this in Cart 0, which is default, or even Cart 1 mode. If you're curious about the difference there, it looks like Cart 1 mode launches the diagnostic ROM in the Mega CD BIOS address space. This mode is intended for systems with a faulty B32 cart signal. If you're wanting to look at how it looks here, you can see right here, for example, this is one of the screenshots. Under the notes, it says, keep in mind that failures in one subsystem may affect the operation of others. For example, a faulty Z80 CPU can interfere with the Motorola 68000 bus because both processors share the bus through a bus arbiter. Because of this, the diagnostics should not be considered a guaranteed way to identify the exact source of hardware failure in every case. However, it provides very useful clues and greatly simplifies fault analysis and troubleshooting. So if you're wanting to work on some old systems such as the Genesis or the Mega Drive, and maybe you might even have some broken ones where you need to figure out what's going on with them here, you might want to turn to the MegaDoctor. Now this had ended up exciting some people here. There's several different optical drive emulator options for the original PlayStation. Off the top of my head, I know there is the ArcStation, which does require soldering. The Mode also does have PS1 compatibility on there. There's of course the SIO, but here we have the ArcStation, which has gone up for pre-order. Now they state here that pre-orders were open for this. It is a brand new optical drive emulator, and the big thing about this is that this is a solderless solution that simply replaces the original drive assembly. Just unbolt the original and replace it with the ArcStation. It even has compatibility with the smaller PS1, which you can see right here. So that's really big right there, because to my understanding, we're all still waiting on the M Station, which is just going to be the solderless version of the X Station, and even the X Station, the Mode, and the PSIO, they all have reliances on different models of the system. Like there's certain models they work on and other models they don't. Now the reason why this one is a little more exciting, because I was just thinking, oh, okay, cool, like a solderless ODE solution that end up beating the M Station to market, although it is pre-order, mind you, but still, they end up stating here that this is a pretty big deal as it's technically emulating the RF signal from the CD-ROM assembly itself. That basically means the PlayStation will see this exactly the way it would an original disc, and there should be no compatibility issues. All of that remains to be seen though. However, I'll definitely do a live stream or full video when I get mine. They also state that there's a few other things to note. At least this is Bob from Retro RGB here. He's stating not all features are compatible with the PS1, such as the virtual memory card and reset to menu option. The price is also a pre-order bonus and will go up after the first few batches. As with all new projects, buying early is a pretty big risk, as most people will want to wait until detailed reviews are out to make sure it performs as it should. But if you're an early adopter, at least you can save some money right now. And right now, there was that introductory pricing, so if you got in early like Bob did here, he ended up paying about $165 for this, including shipping. If we check out the actual ArcStation right here, we can come over here. Yep, solderless ODE for all PlayStation 1 models, connect, setup, and play. It is a solderless install. There is the virtual memory card, although not available on PS1. No ModChat required, of course. Multi-disc support, reset via gamepad, not available on PS1, and the SD card game library. So if you want to check out the installation guide, actually it looks like they have this all set up here. Yeah, you have that. You kind of just pick your option. You know what? I'm curious. Let's just go ahead and pick this one here. This is the PS1. So it even says here that for the PS1, you only need the optical 16-pin flat cable and the motor's 4-pin cable. You have to remove the disk drive there. Then you install the ArcStation just in that same way. You're also going to have to use a dip switch to set your system's region right here. You connect the cables to the ArcStation itself, and then from here you connect them to the PlayStation. I'm really just like very quickly going over this here, but it's really awesome to see this. Like, it's really awesome seeing this. These are really great instructions. I love seeing this. And there's even more PlayStation 1 goodness. Right here, we have PS1 USB, which is a USB development cartridge for PS1 by Orion Soft. They state here that it is a development cartridge for the PlayStation 1, allowing data transfer between your computer and your PlayStation 1 over USB. This cartridge must be used with a USB Mini B cable and the provided PS1 transfer tool available for Windows 32/64-bit as well as Linux 64-bit. Now for the features, they say that you can upload and execute a PS1 executable. You can upload data to an address of the PlayStation 1's RAM. You can download data from an address of the PlayStation 1's memory, so BIOS dump, etc. You can download the video RAM from the PS1 and export a PNG image. Redirect the printf text of your PlayStation program to your computer for easy debugging. Use the provided libsn USB library to download and upload files from or to your computer, acting as a file server. Debugging screen with registers and stack dump whenever your program crashes. Reset the PlayStation from your PC with a special reset command. The cartridge will be able to get updated by executing an update program via USB or CD. And there's also a 3D printed plastic enclosure included to protect the electronic board. For the downloads here, there is libsn USB source code, PS1 USB source code, and the tool itself, PS1 transfer. Now it looks looks like if you're wanting to buy one of these here, it will be €50 and shipping is included worldwide with a tracking number. So that's really awesome to see. There's a couple of photos right here. So it just looks a little something like that. And for anybody who might be wondering if this could, suffice to be used in the same way as like an optical drive emulator, not really. No, this is a straight up development tool. OrionSoft, they have worked on, I actually got familiar with them because I believe Adam Korlick used to cover games that they would release for the Dreamcast. So they're one of those modern developers that likes to work on the older hardware. So it's really cool they ended up making a tool like this. Now, if we look at this video here, let's check this out. Here we got the USB development cartridge for PS1. So it looks like he has a prototype there plugged in. Immediately when he turns it on, it brings up PS1 USB. Welcome to the PS1 USB dev cartridge, USB connected, waiting for PC commands. I skipped ahead a little bit here, so there he entered a few things. It's being sent off to the PS1 USB, it looks like. There we go. And there we go. We have a little bit of an application running right there. I mean a lot of bit of an application, but still, that's running. He's able to reset the system. Let's see what else he can do. He's going to run something else. There we go. It is writing, dumping, maybe. I see something related to a PNG, so it looked like, yeah, I ended up downloading a few things, and there we go. He's going to open that up. Oh, there we go. There we go. It looks like that's been dumped from the PS1. So cool to see. Transfer successful. We're not going to see this whole thing, but mind you, if you are interested in doing development on original PS1 hardware, it looks like this would be a fantastic device to pick up. Now for the last thing here, typically I like to cover something cool, funny, interesting, what have you, in the world of video game modding or video game console modding, whether it is directly or indirectly related here. This is from Time Extension, and it's actually covering an app that Epilogue ended up releasing. It's called Retrace, and it looks like it lets you check and see if your Super Nintendo cartridges are legitimate right here. Now they state here that Epilogue's Retrace app allows you to check the authenticity of your Game Boy cartridges when used in conjunction with the Game Boy operator, and it has now been updated to support the company's new SN operators. That'd be for the Super Nintendo. Retrace works with SN operator now, says the company. Plug it in over USB-C, drop in a Super Nintendo cartridge, and you get the same identification, pricing, and authenticity flow you already had on the Game Boy side. Super Nintendo detection still carries a beta tag. The database is getting better with every release as we gather data from real cartridges, and a small number of less common titles won't have a confident match yet. If yours is one of them, the unrecognized cartridge form in the result panel goes straight to us. And you can see it looks a little bit like this right here, so they end up plugging in Lord of the Rings. It shows up on the actual app itself, and you can see here a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So it shows the actual game name, the developer. Yeah, it's pulling all the metadata, but here it shows official read only. It's giving 96% confidence on there. And then it also shows the pricing and such there. But really, we're really looking to see less of the value on here. I guess there's people interested in that, but we're really just looking to see if this is legitimate or not. And it's cool that if you have this set up already, you can just do that without having to open up the cartridge. Either way, that is about it for this episode of ModChat. Hopefully you all enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it was at least entertaining in some way, and you got to maybe even learn about a few things or hear just some perspectives and recaps and stuff along the way. If you were entertained by this and you appreciated it, I mean, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. And secondly, if you enjoyed it, a like would absolutely be appreciated. And you know what? If you made it all the way to the end here and you didn't like it, I mean, props to you. That's awesome, but you can dislike the video as well too. That's fine. Now, either way, what I like to do here at the end of these episodes is I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase. If you use that keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Now, typically I do like to pick something off of my desk here, and this is certainly not going to be an exception. So you know what? We're going to, I think I've done controller before, but this is just the controller I used for the 360 in the back right there. But it's one of them that I customize, like, wow, it had to be at least 12 or 13 years ago, where I just really just like shelf swapped it. It's not like modded or anything, but you can see the LEDs have been, can I even show you all? There we go. The LEDs have been modded and all that too, just to make everything red. And then I did like, you know, the PlayStation style thumbsticks on here, which are, these ones are all right, at least. But it's not a bad controller to use. I've enjoyed using it. Either way, let's use, instead of controller, let's use the color red. Is that your favorite color? Do you think that there is bad luck associated with that color? Here's one thing. Do you have a red car and maybe you notice that your insurance went up a little bit because of the color? Maybe let me know on that as well too, and I guess let all the other good people here know. What about the band Red? Is anybody familiar with that band? I hope I made at least a few people happy with that reference there, because they've done some good songs. But either way, if you use the keyword red in your comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end. Or actually, I mean, there's two spellings for it. You can even let me know the last thing you read. You can even let me know that you're reading the comments, I guess. So it really just depends on how you're going with it. But either way, that is about it for this episode of Mod Chat. Thank you all for listening, watching, hanging out. It's appreciated as always. And with that being said, let's go ahead and just outro this thing. So this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next time.